And PSG have done it. They are through to the final of the Champions League and will be playing Inter Milan in that final in Germany. Arsenal fans, how are you feeling? Because you lost both games. You lost 1-0 at home, 2-1 away. It didn't quite go the way you wanted, only scoring one goal over the 180 minutes. But you did come up against a really, really good PSG side. And that's the thing. If you said at the beginning of the season that Arsenal were going to be probably finishing second and getting into the semi-finals of the Champions League without winning a trophy, though, I'm sure a lot of Arsenal fans would have taken that going into the season, and a lot of rival fans would have said, you know what, that actually looks like a decent season. So it's a difficult one to put into words, but I'm going to try to, because I think Arsenal did some things that were really, really good. And I think they did some things which were also quite disappointing. And on the day, I think it's fair to say that PSG were the better side and they deserve to go through. Because after losing the first leg 1-0, going away to Paris and trying to get the win, it was always going to be difficult, but we all did think that Arsenal did have something in the locker and they could potentially do it. Obviously, they must have got a massive boost from the team news. Thomas Partey returned into that number 6 position, which meant that Declan Rice was moved forward into that left-sided 8, and then Mika Marino was restored up front. And with the injuries that Arsenal have, this was the best possible 11 that they could go out there and put out. And this is the side that beat Real Madrid home and away. So Arsenal fans probably would have been really, really confident. But then you would have also looked at the PSG lineup and gone, oh my god, there's no Ousmane Dembele. He's on the bench. He's picked up a little bit of a knock. He's not fit enough to start. And yes, PSG still have Kvaratskhelia, Doué and Barcola. But Dembele is, the jewel in the crown. And arguably he's on course for a Ballon d'Or season. So that would have been a massive boost. And you could see from the first 15 minutes that Arsenal were on top. And from open play, I thought they had a really, really interesting tactic. It was during Timber being very high up on that right-hand side, which meant that Nuno Mendes, who had a fantastic game against Saka in the first leg, meant that he had to drift inside, to tuck in, to defend Timber in case he got the ball. And, in that middle area, the pitch was going to be incredibly dangerous, which then meant that Saka had time and space out on that right-hand side in the wide position, which means that he could get a run in, get a little bit of momentum before Nuno Mendes was able to get out to him. And that meant that Saka had time, several opportunities in that first half, and I thought that really it was a tactic that worked, and it really just quite simple actually, but incredibly effective in getting your best player time and space on the ball. But that was in open play. The thing that Arsenal were really targeting PSG was aerially in that first 15 to 20 minutes. 11 long throws Arsenal made in that whole game, which is the most under Mikel Arteta Arsenal have ever had. And I was watching it thinking to myself, 10 years ago, Arsene Wenger against Stoke City, what would he have thought of Arsenal employing the tactics that they had? I had no problems with the tactics, honestly, because I think Arsenal put 11 long throws in the whole game, 14 crosses in that first half. And that clearly indicated that Arsenal thought that they had an advantage over PSG in the aerial side of the game. And I had no issues with Arsenal trying to employ that. I know people would say, oh, it's Stoke FC. But it's the semi-final of the Champions League. You have to go out there and you have to win. And if you think you have an advantage over your opposition, exploit it to the extreme. And that's what Arsenal did. Did they get any luck from it? Unfortunately, no. I mean, Martinelli did have a fantastic chance from the very first throw and from the left-hand side. Martin Odegaard had another one from just outside the box in the second phase of play. But it's that man, Gianluigi Donnarumma, who, before the season, I'll be honest, I didn't really rate. I thought he was an okay goalkeeper, an okay shot stopper, and okay with his feet. But this season, I don't know what's happened to him. He's become an absolute monster. And I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but honestly, I think I would have given Donnarumma, man of the match for this. And I think arguably he's been the goalkeeper of the tournament so far. I just think he's been so good. And he was arguably the difference maker. Yes, PSG have fantastic attacking players, fantastic midfielders, fantastic defenders, and especially fullbacks who end up playing like wingbacks at times. But Donnarumma has been the difference maker for PSG, and they would not be in the final if it wasn't for him. So those two fantastic saves, he made a couple more in later on in the game as well. But Arsenal, it worked. It almost worked, because they should have put the ball in the back of the net. Can you blame them for not doing so? I think you can, if I'm being honest, despite the fact that the long throws and the cross in the box were working, because of the fact that Arsenal had a higher XG in this game. But that's nothing new. That's something that Arsenal have had for a large proportion of the season, and they failed to get over the line in those games as well. So it's not just creating those chances. That's not the issue. It's putting them in the back of the net, and that's why discussions about a striker will always come up for Arsenal. But it's not about players that they wish they had. It's about the players on the pitch. And in that first 15 minutes, I think Arsenal dominated, but you did worry that if they didn't score, PSG who are quite a young side, if we're being completely honest, at average of 24, they would use their experience, and I think it's more street smart than actually experience, because I think they have a lot of street smart. The first thing I noticed was Donnarumma went down with cramp, and I thought to myself, genius. As a goalkeeper, you don't have to go off the field. He takes the momentum out of the game. PSG then immediately get a counter-attack, work their way up the field, and then you think to yourself, oh, they've got themselves back into this game. They've got themselves further up the field, and Arsenal's initial momentum was taken away from them. And it was. Kvaratskhelia ended up having a shot from the left-hand side which hit the post and just narrowly missed going into the back of the net. I think Desiree Doué had one as well, which was from William Saliba putting in a weak pass to his centre-back partner in Kivio, and then PSG countered from that. And I think PSG were getting themselves back into the game. And at that point, it's okay still. The game has ebbs and flows. Also, just make sure you don't concede. Make sure you're still in the game. But then they ended up conceding. And then you think to yourself, there's an absolute mountain to climb for Arsenal from this moment, because I think I was most disappointed with the fact that it was a set piece, and Arsenal have the best defensive record in the Premier League this season, only conceding 31 goals from 35 games. However, they have conceded 12 goals from set pieces, which is the same as Ipswich Town, who are obviously relegated from the Premier League. And I think that's something which is quite concerning, because when a team is so dominant from the set pieces in the attacking sense, you'd automatically assume that they would be defensively as well. And we saw against Bournemouth on the weekend that Arsenal weren't. And it was really highlighted again by the fact that PSG scored from the second phase of a set piece for this one. And I know some people have blamed Thomas Partey for it. I personally have no issues with him, because I think the way he's running backwards towards his own goal and then he's heading the ball out, he's off balance. He's trying to generate all the power to head it away. I have no issues if he can get it as far further away than he actually did. My issue mainly is with Gabriel Martinelli. The fact that there's so much analysis that goes into games before the game has even started, that he should know that Fabian Ruiz is left-footed. So the fact that he's just committing 100% to Fabian Ruiz shooting with his right foot, I thought that was a little bit naive, a little bit almost last ditch, even though it was still the first half of the second leg. And the fact that, Fabian Ruiz, what a fantastic touch. We saw him in the Euros for Spain. He was absolutely fantastic. And then that strike was simply phenomenal. Yes, it did pick up a little bit of deflection from William Saliba. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, the Ruiz, just because the shot was so powerful, it was struck so well, that I think that it probably would have gone into the back of the net anyway, and David Ray may have had it, may have not, but I want to give the attacking player the benefit of that, because I want to see goals like that more often. And you're really hoping at that point Arsenal just keep it tight, go into the second half 1-0 down, 2-0 on aggregate, and maybe could do something in the second half. But just before halftime, they got themselves a little bit of a scare. Marzo Skelly, who had a difficult game, in my opinion. I don't think that's the end of the world though, because considering the opposition he's coming up against, considering the magnitude of the event he's playing in the Champions League semi-final, to have a poor game, it's not the end of the world. He's still only 18, still only really his debut season, so he'll be fine going forward. But as a last man, I did think he was overplaying a little bit too much, and then he ends up losing the ball, and from there Barcola should really go on to score. But Declan Rice, if it wasn't for his energy and his running power and ability to get back, get his toe on the end of the ball, which makes the save easy for David Raya. And then Arsenal go into the halftime break, 1-0 down, 2-0 aggregate. And then the only question is, at what point do Arsenal throw the kitchen sink? Because the kitchen sink's got to be turned at some point. And they're huffing and they're puffing, but they can't really create too many great chances at this point, because PSG know that Arsenal have to come onto them. They know that they're the side 2-0 up, so Arsenal have got all the incentive to go forward, which is just opening them up for the counter-attack. And then it leads to the penalty for PSG. I didn't see it in real time. And on highlight, I can understand why it was given as a penalty, if I'm honest. I can see that his arm is in a natural position, and I can understand VAR combing through footage and going, we need to pick up any errors that the on-field team don't pick up. But I don't like it, but I can understand perfectly why it is given. And so the game was halted. It came back for penalty. But then Vitinha with one of the worst penalties I've ever seen, I think especially when you're making one of those run-ups, when you're doing something a little bit different, taking your time, trying to wait for the keeper to move. If it doesn't come off, you look incredibly silly. And I think that's what Vitinha happened. And David Raya made a fantastic save, diving to his left. And then you think to yourself, okay, it's not gone your way so far. You've had a penalty save as well. Can you use that momentum, and can you maybe, on the back of PSG missing a penalty, dampen their spirits and go ahead and score? But no, it was Hakimi, of course, the one player who's been phenomenal for PSG this season. And you have to criticise Kivio for giving the ball away so cheaply, and then PSG with their lethal attack obviously are going to capitalise. But then also Thomas Partey, Obviously, he was a massive miss in that first leg, but I also think he was quite tired in the second half. I think the whole Arsenal team were, because of the fact that they were running around, pressing so intensely, so aggressively to try and win the ball back and trying to get themselves back into the tie in that first half. That I think in that second half, especially with Thomas Partey taking all the long throws, having to run to the byline on one side then the other, I think he was just really quite tired. But he was one of Arsenal's key players in that tie, so you're not going to take him off, especially considering the weakness of Arsenal's bench. But I think he definitely could have done better for that Hakimi goal, and that strike by Hakimi, just picking up the ball first time and then just putting his laces through it, the curl, the bend. He's almost celebrating before it goes into the back of the net. But then 2-0 on the night, 3-0 aggregate. I do think to myself at that point, there's no chance. But somehow, and this is the beauty of the Champions League, Arsenal look like they could have got themselves back into it. And it all starts from Leandro Trossard being a nuisance on the left-hand side, as he normally tends to be coming off the bench. I really like Trossard off the bench. When he starts, I don't think he's quite the same player, and that's something that Arsenal maybe have to look forward to in the future. But he just possesses Marquinhos, who goes down way too easily. He passes the ball to Saka. The block comes in from the defender, I think it's Lucas Hernandez, who's come on. He doesn't quite get there, and so Saka just has a tap into the back of the net, and also find themselves 2-1 on the night, and you think to yourself, could we? Could we? I mean, stranger things have happened. But then the moment where I was like, okay, it's not going to happen for Arsenal, is when Bukayo Saka missed that open goal. I don't want to be too harsh on him, because obviously he's a fantastic player and he's Arsenal's best player. But I think he has to be scoring that. He absolutely has to be scoring that. And yeah, Donnarumma's diving in front of him. He probably doesn't expect the ball to be coming to him. But if he scores that, 2-1 then on the night, just one goal behind, just to take it extra time, I think at that point Arsenal could have done it and got themselves back into it. But when that one was missed, it's just a mental thing more than anything else. You just think to yourself, no, that's it. And that was it. Arsenal didn't go through. They were knocked out of the Champions League. And so the fallout of it all, what do we think? I think Arsenal, like I said, gave it the all. They worked 100%. They tried really, really hard. But they just couldn't quite do it against a PSG side who I think were better over the leg in the Champions League so far this season, in the knockout competitions especially, because I think, finishing in the places 8 to 16 and so qualifying has been phenomenal for them. And the fact that I think arguably they should have a better manager as well. And that's when the questions come, because this isn't a narrative which is new for Arsenal. Having more XG, being unable to score against a team, relying too heavily on the set pieces. What next for Arsenal? That's a narrative that's been running around throughout the entirety of this season so far. What will happen? I mean, it's now for Arsenal just about finishing the season, make sure they finish second, and then it's about the summer transfer window. I think some of these players, especially some of the squad players, will have to be moved on, because you saw in the other game against Barcelona and Inter Milan, the players that Inter Milan were bringing off the bench to try and make a difference, and most importantly, they did make a difference. So yes, obviously Trossard came on for Arsenal, he made a difference, but it's just one player. You need more players, you need to freshen things up, especially in that defence. I mean, yeah, Timber for wide, but that's just freshening legs for the sake of it, because you really want some attacking output. I mean, yes, the injuries. You've only got Ethan Nwaneri and really Raheem Sterling, but Nwaneri's a young kid. Sterling is Sterling at this point, I think it's fair to say. So, yeah, I think investment, firstly, is going to be an improvement. What to do about the set pieces, because Arsenal need to fix the defensive set pieces. Are they relying too much on offensive set pieces? Like I said, I don't have an issue with it, because it's Arsenal's strength, PSG's weakness. But it didn't work. And so you're trying that right from the off? Is that maybe highlighting to everyone that they don't trust their chances from open play? I mean, Declan Rice, Declan Rice had a chance very, very early on from a header, which he probably should have scored. And if that goes in, the game could be completely different. It is a game of high margins, and it is a game of moments, especially in the most highest level of games. But I think PSG did deserve it, and also, I don't think we can we read too much into it? I think we can. I think we could if you really wanted to. But I think it shows the level that Arsenal need to go on to be able to compete against a side like PSG. But I think for now, I think it's just time for reflection, licking your wounds, and then going again next season for Arsenal. I don't think, that we should be talking about Arteta out or anything. I think it's just a wait and see, and that's going to be the most frustrating thing. It's now Arsenal got to play 3 more games between now and the end of the season, and they just really want to get to the summer and just put the season behind them now, I think. And I still think there are positives for them to take, and I think there's still areas for them to improve on. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And what do you think about the final? PSG, Inter Milan. Who do you have to win it? Let me know.